All right, well, welcome back to El Corazón, where the past inspires and the present connects. That's our aim. That's what we're here to do. Got my co-host here, Johnny,
How y'all doing today?
and happens to be my brother.
Yes, sir.
And today we have a treat. Um, we have Sheriff McNamara in the house today. Can we have? Let me get a round of applause real quick. Where's my round of applause? Oh, that's our horn.
There we go.
Sheriff, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here, and I appreciate y'all inviting me. It's very much appreciated.
What a blessing to have you. Well, let's jump right on into this. We'd like to hear your story about the McNamaras, the legacy, for those who may not know. So could you just start off by telling us, where were you born at?
Well, I was born right here in Waco, and my family actually immigrated from Ireland and Scotland back in the 1870s, early 1870s, and settled in Bosqueville and also the Waco area. So we've been here for quite a while, close to 150 years. So anyway, grew up here, was raised here, went to school here, went to college here, went to Baylor, and when I graduated from Baylor, hired on with the United States Marshal Service. And I was very lucky that I grew up in a law enforcement family. Our family was actually started in law enforcement in 1902 with my granddad's brother, Guy McNamara, being elected the McLennan County Constable here. And then in 1915, he was appointed Chief of Police of Waco. And then in the early 30s, President Franklin Roosevelt appointed him the head United States Marshal for the Western District of Texas, which went all the way from Centerville to El Paso. So it entailed Waco, Austin, San Antonio, Midland, Pecos, Del Rio, El Paso, and everything in between. So at that time, in 1905, my grandfather, Emmett Parnell, was a deputy sheriff of McLennan County, and then he later on went with U.S. Marshals. And so then my father, T.P. McNamara, was the chief deputy sheriff here when he was 21 or 22 years old, early 20s. And so he served as the chief deputy sheriff here for a number of years and then hired on as a deputy U.S. Marshal and was assigned here to Waco, which had 13 counties out of the Waco U.S. Marshal's office. And so he put in right at 37 years with U.S. Marshals. And so I actually started my law enforcement career in 1963 at age 16. My father was the only marshal here, so he got permission from the U.S. Department of Justice to use me and my brother as his guards. And so we had to take some training, and we were both into physical fitness, and he made us box and all that. So we were in good shape back in high school. And anyway, all through high school and college, my brother and I both worked with our dad as his guards. And so we were getting paid as part-time guards. We were going to school. We'd get out in the evenings, and we would run with him, make arrests, put people in jail, so forth. And then when we could, we would transport prisoners to the federal penitentiary in Texarkana, El Reno, Oklahoma, Leavenworth, Kansas. And so I kind of grew up in that environment. And then in 1970, I had graduated from Baylor in '69 and got a degree in business, majored in marketing, minored in business management. And I'd interviewed with Colt Firearms and Winchester to be a factory rep because I love firearms and grew up on the firing range, and had a real good chance of being hired. And then my father called the next week and said they were going to open up 2 positions for deputy U.S. Marshals right here in Waco. And he said, because y'all have been working as guards for the last 8 years, I think you could get the job if you want them.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And I said, absolutely, you know. Yeah. And so my brother and I hired on 4 months later, the same day, October 23rd of 1970, with U.S. Marshals. And so
y'all were training, didn't even know y'all were training.
That's right. It was OJT, on-the-job training.
Yes, sir.
For all those years, and watching our father, and he was such a wonderful mentor and an example of what we should try to be. And I'm not saying I was ever as good as he was, but we had all that good training, and he was a wonderful man. He was a gentleman, but he was absolutely tough, very good amateur boxer, street fighter back in his day. And his story on how he got into law enforcement is just an incredible story. And anyway.
Would you mind sharing a little bit of that about your father?
You sure you want to hear it?
Oh, yeah. I think people need to get to know.
Well, it's he, by his own admission, he was a roustabout, even though his dad was a marshal and his uncle was, chief of police and all. But he was a good boxer. And I've seen him when we were kids work out every morning before he'd go to work on the heavy bag and the speed bag. He had all that set up in the garage, and he'd go out and work out for 10, 15 minutes real hard, put his suit on, go to work. But he said that when he was like 20, he had gotten in some fights with a bunch of people. He said, I didn't like to waste my time fighting just one. He said, I usually like to fight 2 or 3 at a time.
Oh, wow.
And I had an old deputy sheriff when I was in school tell me that. He said, man, your dad would, he'd bust him up really good, and sometime, boy, he'd get busted up. And so anyway, he got in trouble for fighting. And about 6 months later, the sheriff called him and told him he wanted to talk to him. Well, he was sure that the sheriff was going to arrest him. So he put his coat and his tie on, his hat, and he went down. And he said, I fought a lot of people, but I never fought police, or good people. He said, anyway. So he goes down to the sheriff's office, and the sheriff said, I want to offer you a job. And he said, well, Sheriff, I don't have a very good reputation. And he said, I know that, but I want you to start fighting for me. And he said, I can do that. And that's the way it was back then. You didn't hire little Lord Fauntleroy to tame your town.
No.
You had to get some really tough people to do that. And so he said, I want to hire you as my chief deputy. And my dad said, well, you've got a chief deputy. And he said, yes, but he's been stealing funds. And you're the chief deputy now. Your first job is to go in there and arrest him, disarm him, and throw him in jail.
Wow.
And he said, oh, my gosh. He said, I took my coat off and my tie off. And I went in. He said, I told the guy, I said, I'm T.P. McNamara. He said, yeah, I know who you are. You've been in jail here before. He said, yeah. He said, but I hate to tell you, I'm the new chief deputy and you're under arrest. And he said, like hell you are. And he sprung out from behind the desk, jumped over the desk, and the fight was on. And according to an old deputy sheriff that was there, he said they tore that chief deputy's office up, broke furniture, and said your dad finally knocked him out, got his gun, threw it down the hallway, drug him down to the cell, and put him in jail, and walked back up there. And the sheriff said, I think you're going to do just fine.
Oh, wow.
I feel like I just witnessed, like I didn't watch, but I just heard like the Wild Wild West story.
Yeah,
like,
that's what it reminds me of.
I'm picturing like, it's my turn, get out of here.
Well, a deputy sheriff told me that before my dad did. And I would hear all these stories about what he did when, he was a young lawman. And so I asked him about it, and he said, if that sheriff had not trusted me, put faith in me, and given me a chance, he said, I would have ended up in real trouble the way I was acting. He said, I never stole anything, never did anything like that. But he said, I just was fighting all the time, fighting in beer joints and carrying on. And so he said, from that day on, he said, I stayed out of the beer joints and I fought on the side of the law.
Wow.
And so he put in, I think, 7 or 8 years as chief deputy, and then he was a field inspector for the state comptroller's office, and then put right at 37 years with U.S. Marshals.
So as soon as he got that job, he took a lot of pride in it. I mean, changed his whole life pretty much.
It really changed his life, and he admitted that. He said he praised that sheriff for giving him a chance, and he said why he trusted me. He said, I'll never know. He said, but I was always honest with him. He'd ask me if I was fighting. I'd tell him, yes, sir, sure was. And so anyway, when he gave me the chance, he said I took it, I ran with it, and I never let him down. And he said I never looked back. I pinned that badge on, and he ended up being the president of the National Association of Deputy U.S. Marshals, which was thousands of deputies nationwide. So he was president of that whole organization. He was so well thought of in the U.S. Marshal Service. And we were so proud of him. I mean, he was 10 feet tall and bulletproof to all us kids, you know.
Wow. Man, well, that's a story right there.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. That's stuff you watch on TV right there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
We might have to get the films out and get to that bridge where your mom took that picture at. Yeah, I think we can make some Western movies out there.
Yeah, it was pretty wild back then, and I can tell you another good one about the circus coming to town.
All right.
If you want to hear that one.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Even back when I was young, when Ringling Brothers would come to town, all the big circus wagons would parade into town
All right.
with the lions and the tigers and all that. The elephants, would be probably 8 or 10 elephants in a row.
Yeah.
All the elephants would be holding the elephant's tail in front of them. I don't know why they did that, but they just stayed in a line. So my dad said that when he was a brand new chief, he said the sheriff called him in and said, they guarded the circus and they set up in the big top out on LaSalle.
Yeah.
And the sheriff's office was in charge of all that. And he said the sheriff told him that the circus always gives them 50 free complimentary tickets because the sheriff's office protects them. He said, go out there to the big top, tell them who you are, you're the new chief deputy, and that you're there to get the tickets and appreciate it very much. And he said, sure. So he goes out there, goes in to the office, told him who he was and what he was there for. And he said, the guy in there said, well, I'm John Ringling North. Said, I'm running the show now. And said, there's no more free tickets for anybody. And so my dad said, okay, all right, appreciate it. And he said, I went back and told the sheriff, said, they're not giving any more free tickets. And he was a real jerk. And the sheriff said, oh, really? He said, look, get the tick inspector. Find one tick on one animal, quarantine the entire circus. Nobody comes in and nobody leaves, including Mr. North.
Oh, man.
So he got the tick guy. He said, I had a K-bar knife, a Revac flashlight, and a little mason jar. He said, we went out there, went in where the elephants were. He said, there's dark in the tent. He said, though elephants were kind of swaying back and forth. He said, we got up there, looked at the elephant, and said, all of a sudden, I found a tick. I said, all right, here we go. Here's a tick. He said, I scraped one tick off in the jar.
Oh, man.
He said, we called the troops in, blocked all the entrances, and I went in there and told North the circus is under quarantine, suspicion of tick fever, and nobody leaves and nobody comes in, and that includes you, Mr. North. And he said he just sat there and said, I left. Said, went back and told the sheriff. I said, done deal. Circus is shut down. Mr. North's been notified. The sheriff said, that's good. They want to play that way. And so he said 20 minutes later, John Ringling North came screaming into the sheriff's office. And he said, Sheriff, there has been a terrible misunderstanding. And here's 100 free tickets for the county.
And now we doubled up.
Yeah, he did. And so anyway, my dad said the sheriff reached out, got all 100 tickets, and said, thank you very much, Mr. North. I think we can straighten this out. Chief, go unquarantine the circus, and Mr. North, we'll see you at the circus tonight.
Wow. Wow.
That's
and
good
he
stuff.
said, we were friends with Mr. North ever since.
Ever since.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Thinking about, talking about the sheriffs, and I've never had an opportunity other than on TV to see things about sheriffs. So it reminds me of. So how is Barney Fife? All that Andy Griffith show. How close is that to what really? I mean, of course, there's the comical piece of it, but how close is that to what really happens with sheriffs or back in those days?
Well, that's mainly a comedy,
Right.
and the sheriff's office is the friend of the people. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm the people's voice in law enforcement,
Right.
plain and simple. They hire me. When I was with U.S. Marshals, the government hired me, but the people hire the sheriff. And so we try to make sure that our public looks at us in that way. We're there to help them. We're there to protect and serve them, whether it's against criminal elements or disasters, bad weather, whatever it might be. You will see the sheriff's office out there in the county. We'll be blocking roads during floods. We had one of our deputies take his bulletproof vest off in his gun belt and set it on the hood of his car when the water was already up to the door of his car, and he waded out in waist-deep water and pulled a lady out of a car. Those type of things. We've had people send us pictures of our deputies and our female deputies on their knees in the water or in the snow last year changing an elderly gentleman's tire. And, is that in our job description? No, but we look at it as part of protect and serve. And so a lot of times our officers go above and beyond, and I'm not just saying just the sheriff's office, but
Right.
I'm talking about all police.
Sure.
We're there for the safety and benefit of our good citizens. And the Barney Fife, I used to love, all the Mayberry. And there are some small sheriff's offices, around the country that are small that, kind of act like that sometime. There's a county called Loving County, which is right over against on the New Mexico border on the west,
Yeah.
and there's only 80 some odd people in the whole county. So you've got kind of a Mayberry situation there,
Yeah.
Your big cities and all, it's a different situation, but it's, we open our sheriff's office, we have kids, I deputized 4 little children yesterday as honorary deputies, pin the little plastic badges on them.
That's pretty cool. You have to invite us to one of those.
Oh,
that'd be neat.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We will do that if y'all would like to be there.
Yeah.
And there was a young man that he was terminally ill 3 or 4 years ago. So sad, young boy, and he was 9 or 10 years old. And we made him sheriff for a day, and I let him arrest his brothers and sisters.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Put him behind my desk and pinned a badge on him, and so we'd ask him, said, "Oh, he arrested his mother, put the handcuffs on his mom," and I said, "Sheriff," I said, "What'd your mom do?" And he goes, "Drugs." A little bitty kid, and so
telling on it. Hey, be quiet.
Yeah, it was just, we do things like that and try to reach out in the public and just let our good citizens know that we're their friend, we're there to help, and
that was a good observation of what a sheriff is, because for a long time I didn't understand what Waco PD was, or what sheriff was. It was confusing, just being a broad band out there.
Right. Yeah, and with that, what are the for those that don't know, what's the differences from police department and sheriff's department?
Well, the police department normally operates within the city limits.
Okay.
The sheriff is out in the county, but we also operate within the city limits. So we operate really everywhere.
Yes.
And we do drug cases or whatever inside the city limits. We don't try to take cases away from the Waco police, but we do operations inside the city as well as, outside. We have a lot of cities. I think there's 14 or 15 that are in McLennan County, West, Woodway, Mart, Riesel, all around. And so we assist those guys. They assist us. And so we're working together with all the police departments for one thing. And Central Texas has a unique bond between the different agencies because we work very well together. And it's not that way everywhere.
Really?
If Riesel, if they're shorthanded or MART, will answer their calls within the city limits.
And that happens often. That's not something that just never happens.
That's right. It does, and we're glad to do it.
I had a good friend at Martin. They had trouble for a while, like the lack of amount of patrol officers. They always needed help.
Right, and so it works both ways. They help us. It's not a one-way street. So we're fortunate there.
So,
and
city boy here from Kate Ross apartment area would never have understood. We will never understand what a sheriff is. But we live outside of Lorena. Literally, there's a street, and Lorena PD can come to that street. But where we're at, we have to call the sheriff's department. And so we've been out there for like 8 years. And the sheriff department is everything what he just said. Not only are they cops, because I've gotten to see my neighbors, if somebody calls the ambulance, the sheriff department usually comes out. And then Lorena PD comes out. So y'all do have to team up with everyone around y'all. So that I've gotten to see I've got to see y'all at work now. And it's almost like a police department outside of a police department that just kind of floats and helps everybody and has some special issues here.
That's correct.
That's my observation.
And well, that's a good way to look at it. It sure is. And we had a situation back on Labor Day where an individual out in the Golson area had shot 2 people, and he tried to kill a third person. He didn't kill him, but wounded him very badly. And so we had to answer the call, and it was a standoff when I got there, and it ended up in a shootout. Unfortunately, the bad guy got killed. We didn't have any choice. But at the end of everything, we turned around. Hill County Sheriff's Office was right there with us. So we go out of county to assist other sheriff's offices or other police departments. We have a hard time reading county line signs. We don't go up to the county line and say, hey, this is the end of McLennan County, that's y'all's. We have had pursuits that have come into McLennan County from Greenville up on the other side of Dallas. And there'll be 4 or 5 different police departments that have gotten in the pursuit when they get to McLennan County. We've gotten in pursuits that went all the way into Dallas County, and our philosophy is you stay with them until it's over. We don't want to get down the highway and they're running 120, and we said, well, we're out of our county, it's up to y'all. We're going to stay with them once we're in there. So, and we appreciate all the support and the help that these other agencies give our sheriff's office. It works so well, and we just got back from the border this week.
Okay.
We were down there assisting the Zapata County Sheriff's Office. And
I remember that Mike Decourt. Shout out to Mike Decourt. We were one of the first ones in there. I remember we went to the retirement home and helped with that part. That was a good watching everybody come in. I mean, there were counties I've never even heard of or agencies.
Really, it was so helpful because we had police coming in from El Paso. I even had a guy come in and tell me, he said, I'm a federal agent out of Washington, D.C. He said, I told my boss I'm going to West. And he said, I'm here to help. And he said, what can I do? And I said, we're trying to make sure that nobody gets looted. We're going to stop these looters before they get started. And I said, can you drive a 4-wheeler? He said, well, I've got one at home. So we had gotten 5 4-wheelers from the local dealer there. So I put him on that. And here this guy that nobody knew from up north, Washington, D.C., federal agent, was helping us. And I thought, wow, what a deal,
Yeah, I would want to ask a question on you and your experience going down at the border. There when you talk about McAllen or anywhere along the border, is populated heavily by the Hispanic community. What have you seen them go through maybe nobody talks about maybe in a popular way. But what have you seen that they are going through from the things that are going on that are not healthy?
Which Hispanics are you talking about? The ones that are coming across, or the ones that live there?
The ones that live there, yeah.
The ones that live there.
That's right. That's right.
They're getting overrun with criminals. Not everybody coming across obvious is a criminal,
Right.
but they're getting a lot of gang members. They're getting the MS-13. They're getting cartel members. They're getting people that are being trafficked, and the landowners on the river are taking a horrible beating. And some of them have moved out. They're afraid of fear of their life because of some of these dangerous people that are coming across. My first dealing with the border was 6 months after I hired on with U.S. Marshals. In March of 1971, my marshal sent me to Del Rio. I was a brand new marshal, had a big 357 Magnum, big federal badge. We were driving our own cars. I was in a doggone yellow Eldorado Cadillac with a hole in the muffler.
Oh,
I remember those.
Anyway,
Eldorado.
so he called me in. He said, "I'm going to send you on your first detail." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "You're going to the border. You're going to Del Rio." And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I want you to get with the sheriff, Border Patrol, INS, Immigration, and BNDD." And I said, "I know what all of them are except BNDD. What is that?" He said, "Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs." There was no DEA. That was a predecessor. So I'd never dealt with them, only been on 6 months. So I go to the border, and I get with those guys, and we were watching the different loads come across. We made some arrests, mainly weed, a little coke, but mostly bales of marijuana coming across. And then the illegals that were coming across were a different group than is coming across now, because they wanted to work. That was their primary goal. And so that was my first dealing with the border. I was down there right at a month, and we had orders not to go into Mexico. The Immigration and Border Patrol had arrested a Mexican federale with 500 pounds of weed in his camper coming across. So the other side had gotten pretty mad about it, and so they started arresting federal officers that were south of the border.
Oh.
So we had strict orders, do not cross that border.
Oh, wow.
And so, here I am, 23 years old, I'm down there, and, it's nothing like it is now with cartels across the border and what they're doing to people. It's heartless and it's godless down there now.
Could you speak to, for those that are here in Central Texas, that we got different generations of the Hispanic culture. There are some that have no idea what happens close to the border within our community there. What are some specific things that you can talk about that is happening there to the Hispanic people there that live there?
On the border.
Like you said, you mentioned that a lot of them are running from, they're having to leave their place there of living, and like what particularly is happening for them to have to move?
Well, the outlaws that are coming across take advantage of everybody they can. And even though they're Hispanic, they could care less if their victims are Hispanic.
Right.
And so
in what ways have you seen that
Pardon me?
In what ways have you seen that happen?
Well, they've robbed them, they've carjacked them, they're breaking in their homes, that type of thing.
Okay.
And I sent our helicopter to the border a year and a half ago in September of 2022. And they were flying the river. They were sending pictures back of bodies floating in the river, and they would direct the boats where the bodies were. It was sickening. Some of the bodies You could tell had been tortured with a blowtorch, skin peeled off, and really bad stuff. And so it's a different situation down there now than when I was down there the first time. And I've spent a lot of time on the border, have friends in Del Rio, love Mexico. My honeymoon was down there, and it's a dangerous place now, unfortunately, thanks to the cartels. And when we were down there, some of the officers were hearing screaming on Monday night, somebody in horrible pain. They could tell he was being tortured on the other side of the river. It went on for 30 or 45 minutes, and then they heard bam, 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 and all was quiet. So it's, I've seen the videos that Sheriff Del Bosque has showed at the sheriff's conference. It's a real education, what they're doing to people, you know. I don't want to put it out on the air, the things that I've seen, but
what's his attitude? Like, is he at a state? Almost, you know, listening to the stories now, is there some hopeless? Like, does he feel hopeless at times? I mean, it's got to be like for him, that's almost living a nightmare every day.
It really is. He is a very, very good, fine law enforcement officer. I have all the respect in the world for him. He is under the gun, so to speak. He's had death threats from different groups. He's a law and order guy. I think his entire force, from what I saw, are Hispanics. They're all dedicated lawmen. And, you know, they don't go along with this stuff that's going on. They want to clean up their community. The border situation, as far as I can tell, the solution is simple, and that is to finish that wall and then let people come in legally. Let them go through the process. But right now it's wide open. You see groups running here and there, and once they get across, some of them, you know, 15 or 20 of them will scatter like quail through the brush. We had the only eye in the sky down there with that helicopter. And then they were patrolling at night, and you could see, you know, the different movement at night through the fields and the ranch land. But Sheriff Del Bosque is, I know it's heartbreaking for him, and he told me, because that's his county, that's his country, and he's seeing it overrun the way it shouldn't be.
Sheriff, I'll admit I don't know a whole lot about politics and stuff like that, but I have heard people ask the question, what would you say to those that say, as far as the process, right, to come in legally, I've heard them say that the process is crazy long and it's hopeless itself. What would you say to those that have those concerns?
I don't know why it takes so long. I really don't. When I started with U.S. Marshals, we would have naturalization ceremonies in the federal court, and the federal judge would naturalize, you know, the Hispanics. They had gone through the process, and we may have 60 or 80 people in our federal courtroom right there on 8th and Franklin that are getting naturalized. And I remember my father in there one day, and there was a Mr. Reyna who was the grandfather of the Reynas, Bert Reyna, Phil Reyna, the federal officers that were very close friends of mine. And I remember my dad walked over and shook his hand and said, "Welcome to America." And he told me he never forgot that, the feeling that he had when a U.S. Marshal did that.
I think one of the, when that's so sticky of a subject, but when we talk border and we talk, you know, the differences, how to fix it. I think if when we start talking about the wall and we start talking about that, I think if we can somehow immediately be talking about how we can get the paperwork process a little bit easier at the same time, I feel like that there would be a less bump in that road, because right now it feels like when someone says the wall, I think one group gets up and very defensive, and then but if they heard, okay, we're good with the wall. But as soon as we do this wall, we want to fix the process of legalize. So there's the rhyme and reason. I think more people would be for the wall if we could be willing to fix. Do you get where I'm going with that?
Absolutely. The process needs to be speeded up. You have to have a process to vet these people, because they're getting gangsters from Venezuela coming in. They're getting people from the Middle East. They're getting people from deep Africa, these terrible gang members. And the process of vetting these people is so important. And why it takes so long, I don't know. I mean, I just, they're people that need to be here. They need to be vetted and brought in. And I think I don't believe anybody is against that. Now, that's where it's broken. I don't know why it takes years and years to get that done. You know, there ought to be a way to identify people, check their background, make sure they're not terrorists or whatever. But right now, you want to be a terrorist, you want to get in the United States, bring it on. Walk right across with a briefcase and a backpack, and you're home. And that's wrong. That there's no other country that has open borders with an influx of. They were stopping, and they still are, according to the numbers that we got down there this week. They're apprehending up to 10,000 people a day coming across. There's probably that many or more that are getting by that they're not getting.
So I have a question, because I don't know the answer. All those people that are crossing the border, right? Are they searched, or like how does that work? I'm thinking like 10,000 people showing up. Like are they? I don't know. How does that work?
It's I've heard so many things that's being done. I've heard they're giving them cell phones. I've heard they're giving them, a lot of money. I've heard all kind of things. Where we were in Zapata County was south of Eagle Pass. Eagle Pass was the big entry point. That's where the main problem is. But now that they have tightened up on that, they're spilling over into the other counties like Zapata County, doing an end run, so to speak. And
so in an end run, so you're saying there's just so many of them that they're just walking through and no one can really do anything about it?
Yeah.
Wow.
We were sitting up on a
that sounds crazy to me. Like I couldn't even envision that.
On a bluff overlooking the river. And it was wide open. There was nothing for miles as far as you could see, no barriers. The law enforcement was spread so thin. Now during Operation Lone Star Task Force, which is what we were part of, and our helicopter is still down there with our 2 pilots. They're still helping the sheriff and the surrounding sheriffs. Also, it wasn't just a Zapata County, but that was our main target. And it's just an unbelievable situation. It's wide open, and until they can get a grip on it, I know there are people that are against the wall. There are even landowners that don't want the wall, but they don't want criminals coming in. They don't want them busting in their house, mistreating or killing their family like, has happened. And so it needs to be a dual solution.
Amen.
You need to be able to stop it, and you need to be able to vet these people, the good ones that want to come in, that qualify as an American citizen, get them in quickly.
In the vetting, or when people come in, because I'm thinking just logistically here, when we go into a place where we need to be, searched, there's like a wand or something, or, in the airport to even get on the plane, there's the TSA stuff you got to go through,
right?
A machine, right, and it scans you and all that. I'm asking because I don't know. I know how I know how our folks get here, not through just
Custom,
walking in. I know all about that, but I'm just asking because I don't know the answer. Is there any kind of process like that when everybody's coming into 10,000 or 1,000 or whatever? Like, how does that work?
They're doing everything they can. They try to search them or make sure that they're
Okay.
not carrying, weapons and that type of thing. They had catch and release where they would catch them, write their name down, try to identify them, turn them loose. And they were giving some of them cell phones. They were giving them money and turning them loose. So they go on up into other parts of the country. They're trying to tighten up on that, from what I could understand, and do away with catch and release. People that come into your country illegally, it doesn't matter where you are. You go into a European country illegally, if they catch you, you're going to have to leave and or go through whatever process they have. But it's a sad situation. There are people that are trying to get away from tyranny in their own country. There are people that are coming in so they can take advantage of very vulnerable people. There are young people that are being human trafficked, and the cartel puts armbands or leg bands on them. They charge them to bring them up to the border from South America or whatever. Then once they're here, they're monitored and they're tracked by cartel operatives in the United States, and they have to send money back to the cartel as soon as they start making it. And then you have women and kids that are being trafficked for sex, and that's really sad. There are so many that are coming up that are sexually abused, women and little bitty kids. And I don't know, did you ever see that movie, The Sound of Freedom?
I have, yes. Okay. Very powerful movie.
It is an extremely powerful movie. And we had a chance right before Christmas to go to Kansas City and meet Jim Caviezel, the one that starred in the movie and the one that played Christ in the Passion, and sit around and talk with him. And he was a very, very kind, interesting person. And I think, he didn't say this, but it appeared that him being in that movie and portraying the father, I think it did something to him, because he had a sadness about him that my wife and I got our picture with him, and he just had a terribly sad look. And we talked about the trafficking and all, and how important that movie was, because it opened a lot of eyes of things that are going on south of the border and on this side also.
It's super disheartening to have to embrace the reality of that. I know that's near and dear to your heart, as far as what you've done and are doing to try to prevent, the sex trafficking efforts that are out there. What have you learned in that? What's the are there people, the kids and the children that are being sex trafficked, or how do you say it, that are in sex
Being trafficked.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are they from Latin America, or are they from all over the world, or what?
They're from all over the world.
Okay.
We've got them right here, American kids. We just did an operation about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Okay.
And we got sex buyers. We got traffickers that were trafficking 2 young women. We rescued those women, turned them over to Unbound. And law enforcement can rescue them, but we can't save them. So we get them and we turn them over to the Unbound organization. And then they take them to safe houses. They try to get them out of that lifestyle. And so we've teamed up with Unbound since 2015.
Okay.
We started our operation in October of 2014. And so now we teamed up with Unbound. And the McLennan County Sheriff's Office has been operating, or has operated in Mongolia, Poland, Moldova, which is right next to Ukraine, Iraq, and many European countries. The Sheriff's Office is recognized really worldwide for our effort in human trafficking. And we're invited to go to these places, and we're requested. And when we do, when we're requested, we try not to say no. We try to go. And so Unbound has been with us in Mongolia, Poland, Moldova, different places. And so we train police to not victimize the victim twice. The woman's already victimized, and the standard deal was to arrest the prostitute, arrest the woman. We're going after the pimps and the scumbags that are trafficking them and save the woman, the female or the kids.
And then lastly, what would you, from those numbers, if you looked at it, from a percentage point, where are them, most of them coming from? I know they're from all over the world, but what do you, as you engage with folks, where are they mainly from?
They're from Mexico, Central, and South America. They're from everywhere. We heard Venezuela let a lot of people out of their jails, their prisons, sent them north. And they're from all over. But most of them are Hispanics from Mexico on down. But I don't have the exact, the figures, what percentage or whatever, but they're from all over. I mean, Venezuela's sending a bunch of them up here. We've had them from Brazil. We've had them from everywhere.
Well, Sheriff, you have something going on right now during this time. Would you look at that camera and just let the people know what you got going on?
Well, I'm in the middle of a campaign, and it's my 4th time to run for sheriff. So I've got that going on, and we're working it very hard. We're not taking anything for granted. We're getting a lot of good support from our good citizens. And I just want the people to know that we're going to hit the traffickers, the human traffickers, the drug dealers, the robbers, the killers, the scumbags of all kind. We're never going to let up on them. We're going to hit them as hard as we possibly can to keep you, our good citizens of McLennan County, safe.
I have a local question. Can I get that real quick?
Yeah.
So on a local note, talking to some people, knowing that you were coming in, I just wanted to outsource some questions from different perspectives.
Sure.
And then one was like in your jails, as you're working, as you're making schedules and stuff. Are you? Is there any way that you're looking at having Hispanic cops in the jails that speak that are fluent bilingual that can help interpret it with someone that wouldn't know Spanish? And those are some of the things that most were interested in asking you.
Absolutely. We have many, many Hispanic officers in the jail, Hispanic lieutenants, in command staff. We cherish our Hispanic officers, whether they're in the jail or they're out on the street. I don't speak Spanish. I took it 2 years in high school, and
My kids don't speak it either.
Está bueno. I wish I did, and I really want to take it and learn more because I love the language. It's a neat language. But we have a lot of good Hispanics in our department, and we have a lot of them in the jail for that, not just for that reason, but we hire people that are qualified. And a lot of our good Hispanic officers are bilingual. And
Would you say that's some type of strategy y'all do have to, because you have to, when you're dealing with criminals, they're going to be, or not even criminals, just in society, there's going to be the people you'll have to deal with that don't know English. You're going to run into that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have our Hispanic-speaking officers. Some of them are white, speak fluent Spanish. Yeah, and so we will call them out because I can communicate a little bit, but not very well. Yeah. And so I like somebody that can come out and talk to that person and make sure that they're getting the right message from us, and that goes a long way. And so we appreciate those guys and women. We've got some really good Hispanic ladies. I think that having that audience right now, it comforts them to know that is an emphasis. I mean, in their everyday life, correct? Mm-hmm. So, it absolutely is. And you know, we know we have a very large Hispanic population and it's growing. And so we encourage all of our officers to learn Spanish. And so, and we even have some training in Spanish. So,
Yeah, and you know, that means a lot to us, but it also, you know, there's a lot of our Hispanics that are you know, can identify with you in that you don't speak Spanish, right? So we have the what we like to identify as fourth generation Hispanics that can't speak Spanish, and then you got our first generation Hispanics, as we identify them, that can't speak English, right? But we all got love for everybody, and then you have those that can speak them both, and they primarily speak either Spanish and know both languages, or they speak English but know both languages. I mean, they speak both languages but primarily English.
Right.
And so we're all part of the community. And so I like to bring the holistic approach to who we are as Hispanics, because sometimes people will lean heavy on speaking Spanish and Spanish only, but it's like, wait a minute, there's different identifiers of who we are as a people, you know, as a culture.
Sure.
And so I was just going to say, hey, you saying you don't speak Spanish, a lot of us can identify with that are in fourth generation.
Even Hispanic. So
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
don't feel.
But
don't
we all need each other no matter what, right? It's not picking on each other, but it's making sure that we can partner together to say, hey, I don't speak that language, but I know someone who does, and let's come together and be a part of the community. That's what means a lot to us here at El Corazón, where we can come together as a community. So
absolutely, and that's our goal too. We have really good minorities in our department, Hispanics, African American, and we cherish everybody.
yeah.
And so that's our goal, to get as many people working together as we possibly can.
Amen. Well, Sheriff, thank you for coming on in.
thank y'all.
We appreciate you. There's a whole lot more we could have covered, but perhaps at another time we'll come on and talk some more about different things. But we appreciate you, and good luck in the campaign.
Hey,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I've got to give Avery and King a shout out, because I told Avery, your nephew, that I was going to give him that
absolutely.
shout out.
There
So
you go.
I'll get in trouble.
There you go. We'll see y'all next time.